Welcome to session 3 of unit 6. In this session, we are going to look at lesson introduction and content development or presentation. Let's look at the objectives for this session. We are looking at two objectives for this session. One is to be able to introduce your chemistry lessons in ways that you could arouse the interest of your students, and two is to select appropriate learning experiences for your students for the various chemistry topics that you will teach. Lesson introduction. This is the stage where actual classroom interaction begins. This is the point you are going to introduce your lesson. It must be interesting and arouse the curiosity of students. Assume lesson introduction to be the first impression. So let's assume that you are going to meet your crush for the first time. At least you would prepare yourself very well, and when you meet him or her, you would want the meeting to be very interesting. You would want to appear very well, and you would want to do a lot in your first impression in order to gain favor. So similarly, let's assume our introduction to be the first impression to the lesson. And so if it is our first impression, then we are going to do a lot in order to make the students interested and arouse their curiosity. When students are curious in the lesson, then it moves on smoothly and effective learning would take place because they would want to know more. And wanting to know more, their minds will be shifted to what is happening in the classroom. They will not feel tired. They will not be looking at time, but they become so much involved in your lesson. And it all starts with a good introduction. The first part of the introduction is usually used by most teachers to review the previous lesson or the student's previous knowledge. A lesson could be introduced by telling a story, giving a scenario, role play, use of questions, or discussion of current problem, etc. Now these things, when you use them to begin your lesson, students tend to be very interested, especially if you have to tell a story or if there should be some form of role play. Then students will be so much interested right from the beginning. And when they are interested from the beginning, then the lesson can move on smoothly. You only need to be doing some other activities in the course of the lesson to maintain their interest. Alright. As soon as the introduction is done, the topic should be written legibly on the board. This suggests that the introduction should give possible suggestions of the topic. Sometimes if you are able to introduce the lesson well, then students know the topic you are going to write, and that is very good. So you are telling a story, not just a story, but a story that has a link with what you are going to present, so that it will become useful in the course of the lesson. Let your introduction be very interesting, and keep in mind that it is your first impression to the lesson, so let it go well. After you have introduced your lesson, then content development or presentation is next. And you should note that the content development occurs in stages. Alright. Now the teacher notes the learning experiences or activities of the students and his own teaching activities and how they will be carried out. So in the development, that's where you are actually going to show the activities and how they are going to be performed. So if it is demonstration you are going to use, then the development is where you are going to demonstrate to students. The teacher should blend the activities and strategies with the subject matter in a sequence step by step. So the content development is usually in steps. Each step should have topical sentence neatly underlined. So each stage or step there is a topic that you would have to underline. And then the teacher must not leave anything to chance. If it is discussion that you want to use, then what are students to discuss, or what will be the basis for the discussion? And also, is it going to be teacher-centered or student-centered? You have to note some key issues that will arise in the discussion, and then also note the questions you are going to use in the discussion. If it is demonstration that you are going to use, what are the questions that you are going to use to keep students well engaged throughout the demonstration? If it's a question answer technique you are going to use, what are the questions that you are going to use, and then what are the answers that you are expecting from the student? All these things you should plan them, note them in the lesson, and you don't have to leave anything to chance. Okay, so that is it on the content development, and we are ending the session with these self-assessment questions. I urge you to try them. We'll meet again in the next